Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, SSI, SSDI, and Work, Understanding How Benefits and Employment Can Work Together. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katie Law, and I am a Public Education Coordinator at the Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey. The Alliance is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide education, awareness, prevention strategies, advocacy, and support for individuals and families impacted by brain injury. Before we get started, I'd like to share a quick announcement. This webinar is part 2 of our 4-part employment series. Part 3, The Bridge Back to Work, Assistive Technology for Successful Career Reentry, will take place on Tuesday, February 17th from 12 to 1. And also the following week, February 24th, Supported Employment, Building a Path to Meaningful Work. A few housekeeping items before we begin. All attendees' microphones have been muted to reduce background distractions and noise. The presenter is happy to take questions throughout the presentation, so please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time. We'll address as many questions as we can during the session. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing later on the BIANJ website. At the end of the webinar, a link to a brief post-webinar survey will be shared in the chat. We value your feedback, and completion of the survey is required to receive a certificate of attendance. Once the survey is submitted, your certificate will automatically be emailed to you. Our presenter for today's webinar is Dr. Bethany Chase. Dr. Bethany Chase is a senior training and consultation specialist at the Boggs Center on Disability and Human Development, where she provides training and consultation to disability professionals, advocates with lived experience, and families on best practices in employment, meaningful day, transition to adulthood, sexuality, aging, grief, and loss. Dr. Chase's achievements include numerous state and national conference presentations, multiple peer-reviewed publications, and several Boggs Center resources that have been promoted nationwide. Before joining the Boggs Center, she spent over a decade as chair of the transition department at the Cook School and Institute in New York City, where she supported hundreds of students with developmental disabilities and their families in planning purposeful, inclusive lives of their choosing. Dr. Chase earned her doctorate from Rutgers University School of Social Work, her master's degree from Columbia University School of Social Work, and her bachelor's degree in music therapy from Berklee College of Music. I am pleased to welcome Dr. Chase.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It is nice to be back. Those of you who were here last week, nice to see some familiar names. I'm going to go ahead and share. Here we go. All right, so today we are discussing SSI, SSDI, and work, understanding how benefits and employment can work together. Before we get into all of the details here, I just want to start off by acknowledging that benefits are extremely complex. As I always say to folks when I am training on this topic, please know it is not you, it is them. It is very confusing. So I'm going to go over what you need to know in order to be an informed person to interact with these benefits, but I will not be able to problem solve and pinpoint everybody's unique situation. I'm going to make sure that my goal is that you leave today with a basic understanding of how things are supposed to work so that you know when you need help and that you know if you're not getting good, accurate information. But it is very confusing. I've been assisting people in accessing Social Security benefits. I've been working on this topic for almost 20 years at this point, and every single time I teach this class or talk with the family, there is some other scenario that happened that I did not know about. So So please know, truly, if you're like, what is this woman talking about? It is not you. It is truly not you. I'm going to do the best that I can to keep this to the basics and the most critical information that you need to know. If you have questions while I am going through the workshop, feel free to use the chat and to write those questions in the chat. If it's a quick answer that will clarify what's up here on the slide, I'll answer it right away. If it's going to take us down a Social Security rabbit hole, I will tell you to hold on to that question because those are scary rabbit holes, and I don't want to drag everybody down into all of them, or we will not get through all the information today. So feel free to ask the question and we'll figure it out from there. I'm seeing a question about an echo. Is that everybody? I'm not sure if that's something on my end. No?
I
Okay.
don't hear anything on my end.
Okay. All right. So I want to first just take your attention to this resource that's right here, DB 101. This is what I think is the best, clearest resource for Social Security, SSI, SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, all benefits related to disability. This is the best resource out there. It's clear, it's concise, there's no increase of information. Thank you, buddy. Sorry, my son's homesick. He just brought me lunch. Everybody can say hello. It's really clear and concise information, and it's not going to be cluttered with too much text. It's just a really, really great resource. So it's DB 101. This is a QR code that will take you right there. But also, if you just put in DB 101 NJ, it's going to bring you right to that website. I fact check everything with DB 101 consistently. Also, please know that while today, again, my goal is to give you good working information, that there are benefits counselors available out there to assist. So different vendors get contracts through Voc Rehab to do benefits counseling, but you can also call the Ticket to Work helpline. If you want to, good question, Rachel. There's a bunch of states in there. So there isn't one for all 50 states. I think there's about 15 states, but there you make sure to click on New Jersey, and then that's information that's just specific to New Jersey. So if you'd like to speak with a benefits counselor, you can contact the Ticket to Work helpline, or if you're already working with a DVRS counselor, Voc Rehab counselor, you can ask them for benefits counseling as well. So again, today is going to be working knowledge. If you need individual support, you want someone who can really look at all of your personal information and give you more specific information about your situation specifically. I think I just said specific like 6 times, specifically. Okay, Social Security Administration. Okay, so Social Security is an overarching big department that oversees and manages 2 federal disability programs that provide cash benefit to people with disabilities, each with their accompanying health insurance benefits. There's SSI, which comes with Medicaid, and SSDI, which comes with Medicare. We're going to look at these one at a time because they are not the same thing. So when people say, oh, I'm really worried about my Social Security, that's not even enough information. If you're just thinking, what about Social Security? We first and foremost have to be clear, are we talking about SSI or SSDI? So I'm going to go through them one at a time. Before you move forward in applying for Social Security broadly, what Social Security does first, and this is regardless, you're applying for Social Security benefits. You're not into SSI or SSDI yet. You're just like looking at Social Security benefits. The first thing it's going to do is ask if you are currently working at a level of what they call substantial gainful activity. So that's SGA. And that's their fancy way of saying, are you making a substantial amount of money? Now, according to Social Security, substantial for 2026 is $1,690 a month. If you are making $1,690 a month from employment, I know, LOL, exactly. If you are making that, then they say, no, you are not eligible for any Social Security. Nice to see you. Have a good day. Bye-bye. If the answer is no, I'm not making that, then you go on to the next step. The next step is going to find out if you have a disability. So this is what Social Security defines as a disability. Your medical condition must be expected to either significantly limit your ability to perform basic work activities for at least 12 consecutive months or result in death. That is what they define as a disability. And then you have to have evidence of that disability. So this can be doctor's notes, brain scans, rehabilitation records, neuropsychiatric evaluations, psychological evaluations, whatever documentation you have that's related to your specific disability. That's what they're going to want to see. So once you've gone through these steps, we're basically like you're in the umbrella, then we start to get into the specifics. So SSI in particular, Social Security, so Supplemental Security Income, SSI, gives monthly payments to people with disabilities who have low income and low resources. So if you have a disability, are blind, or are over the age of 65, and you also have low income and limited resources, you may qualify for SSI. SSI is accompanied by Medicaid. So if you get SSI, then like magic, you now have Medicaid. You get a Medicaid card in the mail. So SSI is accompanied at this stage by Medicaid. So let's take this the next step. So when they say that you have to have limited resource and assets, let's take a look at exactly what that means. In order to be eligible for SSI, you must have under $2,000 in resources. Not all resources count. Okay, so in the handouts that you're going to have about today's session, it goes through what they don't count when they're looking at your resources, but not all of your resources count. And you have to be making under $994 in countable income per month in order to be eligible for SSI. So not all income counts though as well. So this is what they say is the most that you can have, but they actually don't count a lot of what you have. You have a handout that kind of goes through all of that, and I'm going to explain it more in detail, but this is what they're looking for what they count, and then for their financial requirements. Okay, now you're not expected to read all this fine print. These are the earned income exclusions. So this is just part of what's there. So long story short, Social Security counts less than half of your earned income. Long story short. They'll immediately start taking things off. I'm going to show you the whole formula for what they do, but just know that they really only count about half of what you're actually making when they're looking at your income. The rest is kind of dismissed. Okay, when I was approved for SSDI, I asked the agent what qualified my case for approval, and he said, I can't tell you. Why was that? What qualified my case for? I mean, assume your application, that's a strange situation. I don't know why the person said that, but I would assume that just you met all of the criteria. We will get into SSDI. So this is SSI. Remember, there's two separate ones. So this is supplemental security income. Social Security disability is the next one we're going to get to. So hold on to that, and that might become more clear. Okay, so once they determine what your countable income is, again, based on this formula that they have, and I don't go into all the details about it because it's just a lot, but they will, work with you to figure out what your countable income is. Then how much can you get in SSI? So there's a bunch of different scenarios that determine what the maximum amount of SSI that somebody can get in New Jersey. It says here, person living alone or with others in own household is $1,025.25. We're not going to go through each of these. I'm going to kind of go over like the most common scenario. So there's that one, a person living alone in the house and with others in their own household. What this means is that you are basically paying your fair share of the household expenses. It's documented that you're responsible for paying for your portion of the household expenses. That means that you're living alone or with others in own household. The other one I draw your attention to, there's person living with spouse who is not eligible for SSI. There's also person living in someone else's household and receiving support and maintenance. So that's basically like, let's say that a person with a disability is living with family, and rather than, the difference of the few $100s a month, family doesn't, it's not really going to make or break it for the family. They decided all the documentation to show how the bills are paid is kind of just too much effort. So they say, you know what, they're living here and we're covering all of their expenses. The most that person can get is about $707. So this is the maximum. But again, how much you actually get is very much based on your specific circumstances. But this is the maximum that somebody can get. So this is the most common question that I get asked when I talk about SSI. Someone will say, well, how much can I earn? Or how many hours can I work before I lose my benefits? This is what people want to know. But it's just important to know that it really does not work that way. There's no clear answer. It's this whole formula that they put together. So let me walk through this formula, and don't panic. I know this slide's got a lot of arrows and numbers. I don't really like arrows or numbers either, so don't panic. It's going to be okay. I'm going to walk you through it. This is the most simplified example for how SSI looks at the income that you have. So Sam was not working and received $600 from SSI. Sam recently got a job and earned $200 this month. Yay, Sam. We're very happy for Sam. So what happens? Remember I said SSI only counts about half of what you make. So what do? First, they subtract $20. Then they subtract an additional $65. I have no idea why they don't just say $85, but they don't. Make it make sense. I can't. I'm just the messenger here. So minus 20, minus 65. And so now we're at 115. What they do next is they divide that in half. And so the only income they count, remember, countable income is what matters, not your income, but your countable income. So your countable income, Sam's countable income here is now $57.50. Everybody see how we got there? SSI was like, take this off, divide the rest in half. $57.50. So SSI said, okay, so you made 50, or Sam made $57.50. That's what we count. So we're going to take what was a $600 check and we're going to subtract $57.50 from it. And so now Sam's SSI check was reduced from $600 a month to $542.50. But this is the part that people often miss. They think, oh no, the check got reduced, that's bad. But Sam went from having $600 a month in his pocket to now having $742.50 in his pocket. Do you see? So your check goes down, but it's not dollar for dollar. It's not, oh, you made $5. I'm Social Security. I'm taking your $5 back. They only take back a portion of what you make. That's the part people miss. They think I'm going to lose these benefits if I work, and it's going to be terrible. So this is in terms of what, so that's take home, that's in the bank. So it's important to know that when it comes to employment, that employment always, always wins. It always wins. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. If your goal is to have more money in your pocket, you will always have more money by working than just by collecting SSI alone. Always. There's no situation where this is not true. People get spooked because the check goes down. But that's because your pay is going up. The important thing is the bottom line, right? And the bottom line is you will always have more money by working than by just benefits alone. So I'm seeing some questions come in. I'm going to put some of these on for the end, but I do see them and keep them coming. What people also don't realize is because even though SSI and Medicaid come together when you get SSI, they are not linked together for life. They didn't get married. They didn't pick out curtains. Doesn't work that way. All right. So they are not together for life. There are lots of ways to retain Medicaid even after you've become fully self-supporting and earn or save beyond the income or resource limits for SSI. In the handouts today, there's a big layout of all the different kinds of Medicaid that people can have and still get the benefits that they need. So let's say, you need Medicaid for your health care. Let's say, that you've had, that you had your brain injury before the age of 21. And so, you're using a lot of DDD services. For whatever reason, you might need Medicaid for any services or supports. There are multiple Medicaids that are available. Workability is the Medicaid program for working people with disabilities. And so this is available to folks after you've zeroed out your SSI check because you're doing so awesome, right? So if you're doing so awesome about that, then you can opt into the next level of workability. Okay, so far so good. All right, so then a lot of people say, okay, Bethany, that's good to know. I didn't realize that there was lots of Medicaid that I could access, but what about if I lose my job? SSI and job loss. If you stop getting SSI because you have a job, but then lose your job and your income goes down, you may not have to reapply for SSI benefits if it's been less than 12 months since your last SSI payment. So you've got a full year where if something happens, you lose your job, then it's been less than 12 months, you just call them and let them know. All right. And then it can usually kick back in. If it's been more than 12 months, but less than 5 years, you can ask for what's called an expedited reinstatement. Okay, expedited reinstatement. So that's basically you're not starting from scratch. So I think we can all probably agree that if somebody is working to the point where they have successfully been on the job for 5 years, to the point that they have zeroed out their SSI check, which means they're making twice as much as their SSI check, right? And they've been working for 5 years, chances are that they're going to be able to find another job. And this is not a reason to be afraid of working. Okay. Now, this is really, I use this information a lot when I'm talking with parents who have children with disabilities, but I'm including this in here just in case it's helpful for this population as well, for anybody here, based on your family, your circumstances, or whatever has brought you here today. There are ways to save for critical benefits for a person with a disability that does not interfere with SSI. And so you've got a special needs trust or a supplemental needs trust and ABLE accounts. I'm not going to get too far into these, but basically these are two ways that people can save money in a way that's not going to interfere with their benefits. ABLE accounts are kind of run like a 529 savings account. And a special needs trust or a supplemental needs trust, same thing. You do need a lawyer. That's a place where you can save resources and assets, and it's protected from Social Security. It's a place where you can save for a loved one. And again, this is kind of a whole other workshop. I just want you to know these two things are available and out there if they're a good fit for your family, for your family's needs. Okay, so reporting basics. You have to report earnings every month, even if it's the same. You have to report to SSI if you start or stop work. You have to report changes in hours or pay. You have to report bank balances over $2,000. And you have to report moves or changes in household expenses. So you can do this by using the app, that little SSI blue box that's on the slide. That is what it looks like for the SSI app. You can do it online. You can do it in person. You can do it over the phone. You can do it via mail, whatever works for you. But just know that you have to report monthly wages and changes to your income, your resources, or your living situation. Okay. All right, and I'm seeing the questions, but I'm going to get through the SSDI piece, and then we'll come back and kind of see if there's any similar questions or things that I can clarify. But again, keep the questions coming. Okay, now we're going to pivot to SSDI. SSDI is Social Security Disability Insurance. SSDI is accompanied by Medicare. If you work and become disabled, you can collect SSDI. So with SSI, you're really trying to make the argument that you're unable to work. But with SSDI, what makes you eligible is that you do, in fact, have a work history. So work history test 1. So if you want to apply for SSDI, you must have worked. Again, what makes you eligible is that you have worked and you've essentially contributed to the SSDI system. You must generally have worked. If your disability began before the age of 24, you have to have worked about a year and a half during the last 3 years. Age 25 to 30, about half the time since you turned 21. And age 31 or older, at least 5 years during the last 10 years. So that's test number 1. If you don't pass the recent work test, you are not insured and you do not qualify for SSDI benefits. All right, so and then here's just some more information on here for just how much you have to have worked, right? This is part of the work history test. All of this, if you want to like find your exact age and go into details, this is all on DB 101. But again, you have to have worked into the system. So if you pass the work history test, and you meet SSA's definition of disability, there is no asset limit for SSDI. There is no resource limit for SSDI. Then you may be eligible for SSDI. All right, so that's how it works. You must have worked. You must meet Social Security's definition of disability. And now remember, definition of disability is, are you working at SGA? And do you have a disability that disability that limits your ability to perform basic work activities? So disability is not just about like how you feel. They really look to see what you are earning. So that's the definition of disability. No asset limit, no resource test. Okay, so let's say you pass the work history test, you meet their definition of disability, and you are approved for SSDI. Still, a lot of folks say, okay, but what happens if work doesn't work out, right? I don't know if this is going to work for me. Last week, we talked about accommodations for folks with TBI, and one of the most common recommendations, they say start slow, like see how it goes. Start slow, start with small hours and work up. And so people sort of get in this whole, they're like confused because, if I start working, are they just going to cancel everything out? So please know that SSDI has rules that can help you get back to work without having to worry about losing the benefits that you'll need. These are called work incentives. So there are a few. So the first stop is called a trial work period. That is the first stop. So a trial work period is after your SSDI benefits begin, you automatically enter your trial work period. That's TWP. They love acronyms. It doesn't matter how much you make it work, you still get your full SSDI benefits. The TWP ends when you use 9 trial work months in 5 years. If you earn less in a month than the trial work level, you also get your full SSDI benefits, but you do not use up a trial work month. All right, so the trial work month is it doesn't have to be consecutive, right? It's just like 9 months within 5 years. And if you are earning less a month than that trial work level, and again, I'm not like this, I'm not 100% positive about, I think that level is relative to you, but I can't give you a number on that. I'm not 100%. But if you work less than your trial work level, you still get your benefits, but you're not using up a month. All right, so that's a trial work experience. So this gives you a lot of time to try things out, right? And especially if you're starting slow, your SSDI benefits will not be affected because you're unlikely meeting that trial work level over that trial work level month. So it's just you're getting a chance to practice. Okay, second step is an extended period of eligibility. All right, let's see what that one does. After the trial work period, so again, that's all the time it's taken. After you've exhausted all of your trial work period months, now you enter what's called the 3-year extended period of eligibility. It lets you work and get benefits for every month that your countable earnings are below SGA. Okay, so if you're not making that SGA for whatever reason that month, then you're able to get benefits for that month. At the end of your extended period of eligibility, you'll keep getting benefits as long as your countable earnings are below SGA. And that's that 1690 number. As long as you are under that. However, once your earnings go over the SGA level, your SSI, SSDI benefits will stop. All right, so you've got the trial work experience, trial work period, and then extended period of eligibility. And then just like SSI, you're in that expedited reinstatement. So this is the same thing that we discussed with SSI. It counts for SSDI too. So these are built-in work incentives so that you can try. You can try slow. You can try part-time. Once you start demonstrating to Social Security that you are able to meet SGA, right? You're able to meet that substantial gainful activity level, because that's what they use to define disability. That's when your benefits will stop because they'll say you don't need us anymore. Just like SSI, they're SSDI reporting. So this is much simpler. SSDI does not require monthly paycheck reporting. Instead, you want to report starting to work. You want to report stopping work. You want to report big changes in hours or pay. You want to report self-employment. This can be done by phone, online, or in person, but you have to report it. But SSDI as a whole, I would argue, is just in general a simpler system to understand. It's just a bit more like intuitive. So there's two other work incentives I want to mention before, and I'm leaving lots of time for questions here. We actually got through the information a little quicker than I expected, but that's probably not such a bad thing. There's often people have a lot of questions about this. So impairment-related work expense is another work incentive. This is both SSI and SSDI. So there is what's called an impairment-related work expense, IRWE. So this deducts the cost of certain items and services from a person's gross earnings when calculating substantial gainful activity, SGA. So this is something that's paid for by the person. It's a service or product the individual needs to work, and the cost is reasonable and represents standard charge. So you should be able to see on your screen, there's some examples coming up, but basically, let's say that you are not able to drive. What you can do is use an IRWE to take a lift, like a Lyft or an Uber, or like a ride share, etc. And then you document that as something that you need because it's impairment-related work expense. You've got to get to work. It's in the handout too. Yeah, if you can't see it, it's in the handout as well. So you can deduct the cost of like a ride share to get to work. And when we say that the service has to be reasonable and represent a standard charge, what this basically means is you can't like decide you're going to roll up to work in a limo and then count that, right? That's not a reasonable. I mean, I think I kind of support you doing that, but it may not be considered reasonable. So that's what we're saying, a reasonable and supports a standard charge. So some of you are saying that you can't, that this isn't legible on your end. So service animals are on here, medical devices, certain drugs and medical devices, procedures, transportation costs, attendant care services. So anything that you can argue is related to work, you can deduct that cost from your SGA. And so that gives you more wiggle room in terms of having income that they consider reportable and countable for SGA. Okay, the other thing, this is for SSI and SSDI, is called a PASS plan, a plan for achieving self-support. So this is a way to save for a big ticket item beyond your resource limits. So they say, for SSI, for example, that you can't have, any more than $2,000 in the bank. Well, how are you supposed to save up for something? If you can argue that it's something that will increase your prospect for self-support. And that's really broad, right? Prospect for self-support. Then you can save up for that item. You do have to kind of get this approved ahead of time. There is an application for it. And that way you can save up for that big ticket item if it's going to achieve your self-support. So adaptive equipment, if even like if you need to modify your home in some way, like anything that you can connect to helping you achieve your self-support, you can save up for that big ticket item. And again, you do have to apply. All right. So I know that's a lot. How's everybody doing out there? I'm gonna close the, actually, wait, before I do that, I'm just gonna go back to this slide here and just remind everybody that there is benefits counseling available. All right, so what about supports and services from the TBI fund? Are you asking if that is, tell me more. Yeah, expand your question. Whether or not that would be basically if you could use that, like saving up for something. Yes, or you can unmute if it's easier. Yeah, or type it. It's fine. Here, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to give you a second. All right, so again, this is if you want help. DVRS office offers, Amy just echoed that as well. You can ask if you're working with DVRS. You can ask for a benefits counselor. You can also call the Ticket to Work helpline. TBI fund is payer of last resort. Can you just phrase all of that in a question? I'm just not sure. Do they cover certain items that a patient? So I don't know. That's outside of my area of expertise and what the TBI fund would pay for. I do know if you're getting that these would probably be not things that SSI or SSDI would like count against you. I wouldn't think so, but I don't actually know what they might cover. That is, I'm so sorry, that's outside of my area of expertise. What this would do, right? If you're not saving up for that, if you're using the TBI fund to cover something, fantastic. But if you decide that you want to save up for something, then you can do a PASS plan. If you're getting TBI funds and you're saving them, then you could use a PASS plan. All right, excellent. And Sandra, if you want to share a link, that would be awesome. That would be great. Okay. So we all have the ticket to work number. If you need extra help. Yeah, I'm not sure. That wouldn't be a question for me.
Sandra, I can contact you after the webinar and we can go through your question in more detail.
Okay, let's see what questions I missed. And then I'm also, as I'm opening up DB 101, again, it is my go-to in case somebody has a question. I'm very familiar with the how to get around that thing. So I have it open up here just in case I want to fact check myself. So I'm opening that up as well. All right, so let me just see what I missed in here. Okay, so I'm like just trying to see, I'm reading through all of them to see if there's like sort of common questions. And then some of these I think might have been sort of answered as we went through. Okay. And you know what? I want to correct myself. When it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, I think that's wrong. So let me go back and correct myself. Somebody asked in the workshop if it was gross income or take home, and I said take home, and I was like, I think I got that wrong. So it's before taxes. So it's gross earned income before taxes is what they're looking at. Okay, so I thought maybe I got that wrong. I was just fact checking myself on that one. Okay, so someone has how often do they recalculate their guidelines? So they do it every year. They have not adjusted the resource requirement since the Stone Age, or the resource limit since the Stone Age at $2,000 has been there since I have been doing this work. That has not budged. They do increase the SGA every single January. So these are the 2026. But it's not. I feel like taking an inflation is almost giving them too much credit. They raise it no matter what by $50. There's often a lot of buzz about fixing this and letting people save more money and earn more money. There's always talk of this in DC, but as of now, this is still where we are. Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah. It's how much you can have, it's how much you can get. They increase it every single year. Okay. And then let's see what else we have. So someone asked, I'm hoping that by the time we got to the end, somebody said, in effect, what you're saying is you have to work a minimum wage level job in order to keep your insurance. So no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that because insurance is not tied, they come together, but remember, they're not married. So you apply for Social Security, you apply for SSI, Medicaid comes with it. But there is no limit to how much you can earn and still be able to get Medicaid through NJ Workability. There are no more limits. They took the limits off. And you work up to like, you can make up to like 76-ish thousand dollars a year before you even have to really pay in. It's actually quite generous, I think, in terms of what working people can make. So just remember, just because they come together doesn't mean they stay together. So when you say insurance, there's a difference between the cash benefit and your insurance. All right. And then someone was asking about, let me just double check. A lot of these are really tricky. I have a rule of never just making things up when it comes to this. There's so much misinformation out there. So let me just look here. Here we go. All right. And I'm looking up the specifics. I see this question where someone was asking about SSDI. and insurance for SSDI. So I know that it's the same thing. They're not tied together, but I'm just looking up just to make sure that I have the time right here for you. So if your SSDI check stops because you're making over SGA, right? Then you keep Medicare for looks like almost 8 years after that. And then after that, if you are still working, then you have Medicare, basically the same thing. Like you can like buy in with Medicare as well. But you can work over that for basically up to 10 years. Even if your SSDI payment is zero, your Medicare still continues. Yes, that 1690 is SGA. Yes, that's correct. And they always say SGA in like online and in all of the resources you're looking at because SGA changes every month and this way they don't have to update it. But yes, right now it's 1690. All right, what else someone said there's a question. What is 1690 for? That's just what Social Security considers substantial gainful activity. That's their number. They just decided. I don't know how. They just decided that that's the bar, that if you make less than that a month, then that is part of what constitutes having a disability as far as they are concerned. That's just their number. I have no idea how. This is highly confusing. Please remember, like I said at the beginning, it's really not you, it's really them. It's really them. And this is why I'm reluctant to answer too many individual questions because it tends to overwhelm everybody else. So I'm just trying to look and see what are kind of broader questions. And then other questions, again, I highly suggest DB 101 as a place to go for more information as well. Yeah. And also, one thing I want to say too, if you get really confused and you have a question, I suggest the truth is the people that know the least about Social Security are the people that answer the phones at Social Security. So if you have a question about any of this, you could reach out to a benefits counselor. You have my email. Like truly, you can reach out to me if you have a question. If it's outside of my expertise, I will tell you that. I only answer questions I know the answers to. But calling Social Security to ask them a question is often counterproductive. I know. I know. I'm sorry. I know. I cannot tell you how many times I've called them and I've had to explain the law to the person on the phone before I realized this is just a waste of time. Yeah, and Sandra made a point here also of just saying like this is all tied up in the federal government. You know, sometimes people feel like collecting benefits is safer somehow than work because they feel like, well, it could not go well. I might not be ready. Like, what if I lose my job? Like, I have my benefits, I have my insurance. This is easier this way. And to Sandra's point, this is all federal funding tied up with what the federal government is doing. And so it's not necessarily as secure as I think sometimes we would like to think, that this is up to the whims of Congress. So far, it seems like in our current climate that most disability related things have been pretty okay. You know, relatively speaking, there's been a lot of things we've been concerned about, but it's absolutely correct that we're very much, you know, vulnerable to the whims of different policymakers and their opinions on how we should do this. It's also not helpful to go to the Social Security office in Trenton. They do not always give you the correct answer. Yeah, yeah, the person you're speaking to might not. This is kind of why I think these sorts of workshops are important, because what I really want you to walk away with is a sense of like, I don't think that's right. If you can feel that when someone gives you that information, just like that doesn't sound right, or that's not at all what that person in that webinar said, or that doesn't feel right. You're probably correct. That's really what the goal of this is to know when you kind of have to phone a friend, get some kind of support to help you figure out if the information that you're getting is accurate. Um, yeah, it's just the truth. Let me see what else I might have missed. Is there anybody who had a question that felt broad? I'm like scrolling through that I did not answer.
Bethany, I feel like you've gotten to everything that was mentioned in the chat. So unless there's other questions folks have,
Okay.
do they take inflation into consideration? I think you answered that.
Yeah.
Are VA benefits excluded as income?
So there's earned income and there's unearned income. So any other benefit that you get is considered unearned income. They have a different set of rules than earned income. Um, and again, I didn't get into that today because we're really focusing on the return to work and what your earned income will do to your benefits. Unearned income is a whole other workshop. So the answer is it's not included as earned income, it's included as unearned income. And then based on that formula, that could change things as well. If you go to if you basically just look up unearned income, you'll read all about how that works. But I don't want to, that's like, again, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But yeah, they will count it, but it's a little different than if it's earned income. And that's with any unearned income. So sometimes you can have SSI and SSDI, and then that they don't play in the sandbox nice together sometimes because it's two sources of unearned income. And that it gets complicated. So if you're looking at earnings and VA benefits and you have SSI and SSDI, it's probably a good idea to sit down with the benefits counselor and they can really walk you through your full situation. You can have SSI and SS. It's possible to have SSI and SSDI at the same time, but usually SSDI income will make you ineligible for SSI income because it's unearned income that will basically cancel it out. Technically, it's possible, but again, like they do not make this easy. They do not make this easy. Do you have to draw down any assets you have in order to receive your SSDI? No. So your SSDI is not, there are no asset or limit requirements. SSI, yes. SSDI, no. What makes you eligible for SSDI is that you have worked, that you passed that work test. Remember, that was like pass the work test. And do you have a disability? That's it. You do not have to draw down assets for SSDI. Other questions? Is everybody okay? I know this is, whenever I teach this, I'm like, I'm so sorry.
I think you're right.
Everybody-
I think it's the multitude of questions that come afterwards because, you hear this a couple of times and I feel like I have it nailed down. And then with all
Yeah.
the various questions that come up, it can seem overwhelming. I think your advice about benefits counseling is a really great step for folks to take if they are getting multiple answers and getting really confused.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I'll just check the Q&A box real quick. I don't see anything there. Are some considered as income? What if you receive dividends? Do you know anything about that?
Again, with SSDI, it doesn't matter. I think if you're like the income, um, it doesn't matter for, if because you're basically like it doesn't matter for SSDI. For SSI, all of that does matter. For SSDI, it does not matter. Your income is not counted when you apply for SSDI. It's when you go back to work. Like again, in order to get SSDI, you have to show that you're not working, that you're not earning that. All right. So again, if like anything is unearned income, that's going to be calculated a little bit different. How do your SS benefits kick in after you hit your retirement age and stop and your SSDI, SSI stop? So I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't want to answer that question because I'm not sure. That's the first one for me. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Dr. Chase, thank you so much. We really appreciate you trying to help unpack some of this complex information, like you said. If there's any last minute questions, Dr. Chase and I will stay on this call just for a minute and look through the chat just to make sure we got to everybody. Um, Thank you so much for your expertise. And like I said, feel free to email myself or Dr. Chase if your question was not answered. As a reminder, please be sure to complete the post-webinar survey. The link is available in the chat. Once the survey is completed, you will automatically receive your certificate via email. Thank you again to everyone for attending today, for your thoughtful questions and comments. We hope that you will join us next week for our webinar, The Bridge Back to Work, where Dr. Chase's colleague, Dr. Kimmel, will be presenting on assistive technology for a successful career reentry. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much.